I'm here today outside of Ealing Police Station and I'm joined by the chair of the Ealing Safer Neighbourhood Board, Richard Chilton. Well, we're here to discuss a number of issues pertaining to the police of the borough and some plans that are lined up that will change how they operate. But firstly, before we go into those plans, Richard, could you explain to us what exactly you guys do at the Ealing Safer Neighbourhood Board and how you help the community?
Yeah, right. The Safer Neighbourhood Board was set up a few years ago, basically. It replaced previous police consultation bodies. Essentially, its job is to provide local challenge to the police force. So essentially what we do is we've got a series of responsibilities, basically, but our job is to go through those and with other issues that come up for the community, effectively questioning the police as how they're doing things, challenging them on particular ways that they're doing that job, basically. So that's it. So essentially we're a voluntary body, basically, but our job is to fundamentally ask questions of the police as to how they're doing, challenge anything they're doing that we're not happy with, basically. And we do have some other functions as well, like to run particular projects, so small projects basically, which are funded by MOPAC, but designed to help things to do with crime, etc., and engagement in the local community.
And speaking of MOPAC, which for those who are unaware is an abbreviation for the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime, they hosted an event last month on the 14th of September, that is. They invited residents of the community to come along and basically give their thoughts on the aforementioned plans that are lined up. The event itself only brought in around 100 residents, which if you consider the 250,000 adult residents in the borough, that's a fairly paltry number. At the event itself, they discussed a number of closures that are lined up. Two of which that particularly stood out are set to be the closure of Ealing Police Station just behind me. And now, if these plans, become a reality, what will this mean for Ealing?
Right, I think we just need to look at the overall situation first as to how all the stuff is going by way of sort of contact with the police, etc., and how that works. Now, at the moment, the main way of getting hold of the police is through the 101 and 999 service. That's where the vast bulk of the contact comes, basically. There's some contact through the police stations, and there's some contact through websites and other digital means, basically. I think we just need to understand the way sort of things have been moving there. There's been lots of difficulties with the remote access in the past, basically. One of the things has been with the website, where it's been particularly poor. It's only accepted some crime reports there, and of those people who start a crime report, 75% used to give up before completing because the thing was so bad, basically. So the police have done quite a bit of work it started off from early on this year, basically, to improve that a lot. So where anybody wants to report a crime online, basically, they can do so much better. So they've... and there we are, the police going to something. Right, so they can do it basically much better. It's hopefully much less chance of sort of abandoning it part way through, basically. But also what they've done in particular is increase the range of crimes that can be reported. One of the big bugbears before was particularly things to do with vehicle-related crime, basically, whereas what happened often was that you phoned up 101 or so for that and were told to go to a police station. And if you particularly want to take 2 hours out of your life, you can go to a building like this up here, basically, where you'll spend perhaps a bit of time sort of waiting to go in, basically, and then probably a longer time waiting for somebody inside and filling in long, tedious forms, basically. So quite a bit of that has been put online now, so people don't need to take 2 hours out of their lives to do that sort of thing. So things like that are improving, and also there's particular other ways, app-based ways of reporting things. The Ealing Police plus one of our Safe Neighbourhood Board members has produced a video promoting a particular app called Self-Evident, so that people can report using those sort of facilities. And you can sort of see the advantage you can get by just looking at what Ealing Council have done that way. And Ealing Council produced their 24/7 app, which enables reports to their sorts of issues that concern them to be done no end easier than it could be before. So they're moving, shall we say, the police are now moving towards a bit more of that sort of way of working. So it's both, it ends up being more convenient for them, but it ends up being more convenient for the public as well. So I think that's the first bit of the ways of sort of reporting. Now we've now got the issue of closure of police stations, or particularly there's two bits: the police station itself with the back office functions, and then there's the front counter facilities. Now, the front counter is, in other words, where you go and report something or talk to the police, basically. Now, briefly, the figures that Mopac published was that for adults in Ealing, basically, it works out as a person only comes to a police station on average once every 20 years for anything. And if they want to report a crime, it's more like once every 100 years. So it's a pretty infrequent thing for any individual, any adult to want to do, basically. What we haven't got is other things that aren't crimes, basically, which things you still have to go to a police station report, and whether or not there's other ways of doing that now. Now, let's look at just the police stations and things as to what's being proposed for closing the front counters. There's some little bits of front counters around some ward bases which are occasionally open, which, to be honest, hardly anybody went to, and it was a bit of a waste of time the police going there, basically, because they'd sit around and then nobody would come and they'd go away again, basically. So that's sort of being closed, but the particular things are the police stations. Now, I think one of the issues is really just which is the most important to do. Obviously, the Ealing police station is the most central one for the whole borough, basically. If you were only having one, it'd probably be the one that is easiest to get to, certainly by public transport. The difficulty is that, by and large, Ealing police station takes least crimes, or least visits, basically. Southall has got much more, and the Acton's got much more. So there's a bit of an issue there as to know which is the most convenient place, and particularly if you have, say, just one of Acton and Southall, whether or not that's a bit of a hike from the other end of the borough, basically. The other big thing, though, is really what happens for the other functions at the police station, because the other things is essentially a base for things. I mean, you've seen here the cars coming out, basically, as to what's been going on. One of the bits of how to do the base is where else they could move to. Now, some of the things that Mopac in particular have been looking at is where can we save money on this? And they've simply gone through and said which buildings have we got, and if we sold them off, which can we make most money from? This one is in the centre of Ealing, basically. It's a freehold premises, so they say, right, we can make loads of money from that. Something like Acton, it's a less desirable location in some ways. It's, we wouldn't make so much for selling that. So, so if we sell Ealing one and Southall one, then we can make a lot more money there. Unfortunately, what they haven't worked out is how they can do that and the other costs involved. Like at the moment, they simply can't fit all the people in this building into Acton, basically. So they haven't got a viable plan. They can't fit all the police cars into the yard at Acton, basically, so they haven't got a viable plan on that. The Acton officers as well are partly occupied by the Hammersmith CID, who are out because their building is being refurbished, and they're expected to be there for another 2 years. So it's quite some time before they've got anything like a viable plan as to how they can actually consolidate or move somewhere else. They haven't, as far as I'm aware, got any other premises that are lined up in any way, basically. So they haven't worked out what costs would be involved in doing that. So they've got the saving costs, but they haven't got the costs for actually where you go to, and the removal costs, etc., refurbishments potentially of Acton's police station. So they haven't got a viable plan, and say they're some way from getting to that. The other concern we got is how much time it will take if they go to just one place in the borough. I mean, there's a couple of bits there. Firstly, the cars and things as to how long they take to get and to and from places. The other thing is the police officers that go around the community, basically. I mean, basically everybody else who has a mobile workforce works from home, but the police don't seem to do that. They seem to always start at one base and go back to one base. So if the base is remote from where they're working, there's all this transport time that's taking time off when they could be doing useful work. And again, they don't seem to have factored that in, don't seem to have a viable plan for doing that. So that's a concern. So I think they're some way away from actually getting to, shall we say, a little bit on paper that says we can save all this money if we close this building, to actually having a way of, how can we actually work instead?
Well, due to cuts at the meeting, at the Mopac meeting we're discussing, the Met Police actually said, they stated that they need to save around approximately, I think it's 400 million between now and 2020. Is that correct?
That's the latest figure they've got. what, yes.
Okay.
Now, whether or not there'll be any changes in the autumn statement at the end of November is another matter, basically. But at the moment, that's the figure that we understand is what they're looking to say. Yeah.
One of the aims by which they aim to save this money, is they aim to stop investigating crimes, offences that are deemed to be of a lower level that don't have any known suspects. Do you think that this potentially affords a sort of free pass to any prospective criminals, or do you think that there are so few of these occurrences, or indeed that so few of these offences are actually investigated successfully, that this won't actually amount to any difference?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily that there's not too many of the offences, but there is an issue of how successful that initial investigation is. My understanding, and from what the police here basically have said to us, is what they're going to do is to stop the investigation at an early stage. Basically, in fact, they won't do investigation unless there's any information that leads to a realistic chance of any conviction, basically. So what they have said as well, though, is that whilst they close it, the intention is to close down very early, basically. They will reopen any investigation if more information becomes available.
The plan itself actually outlined the intent to merge police forces in the boroughs of Ealing, Hillingdon and Hounslow. Now this would result in there being only 3 24/7, as you've called them, front counter police stations, serving I think around 860,000 people in
Sounds
total.
about quarter,
And
yes.
that's probably a fairly low estimate. I'm sure it's higher than that at this point. How do you think that will affect police efficiency, but also how will that affect the role of the board itself?
Right. As to the role of the board, I don't think that changes at all, because essentially the safe neighbourhood boards are all borough-based, basically. There's no suggestion at all that they go change from that, basically. I think the difficulty might just be if 2 of the boroughs, say, have their meetings on the same date, who can you get who's senior enough, basically. So that's the sort of issue that we'd have, but that's the only immediate thing for safe neighbourhood boards. For the rest, the overall way of merging borough police forces is one, again, to try and improve efficiency, basically. Some of the ways that there's a couple of pilots going on at the moment. One has been working rather better than the other one, basically. It's become clear to the Met that basically they've got to go a bit slower than this than they did initially, because some of the ways aren't working so well. Also, it's got to be geared to the localities, basically, that they've had to do things differently in the boroughs that are emerging in outer London from the nearer inner London ones. So that they're clearly very aware now that they've got to go very carefully, basically, as to how they work, how they do that merger, basically, in a way that doesn't reduce the service levels. And there was an issue in the outer London borough where they tried to put all the sets of police cars, basically, that we've had here, basically, all in one place, basically, and found that the response times sort of fell through the floor, basically. So I think what they're doing at the moment is gradually working through, trying to make sure that the service levels are fundamentally the same, or more or less the same as they were before. So I think potentially it can work well, but they just got to do it very carefully and just monitor how they're doing things, basically. Make sure that things are going well, and if something isn't going well, to step back, basically, and change it, potentially back to the way it was before in some areas.
Now, Richard, a lot of the issues I've brought up, obviously on paper, as I've described them, they do seem to be quite negative, but as you've elaborated upon, many of these things aren't as bad as they appear to be. Are there any other positive things that the residents rather of Ealing, have to look forward to, or rather can take hope in, regarding the police and how they operate?
I think some things at the moment are improving, but slowly, should we say. I've said the website is improving, but slowly. There are still some things you still can't do on the website, basically. There's things like the various apps that are around. There's one called Self-Evident that's being promoted locally, basically, but there are apparently other ones. The Met's longer term intention is to actually sort of perhaps have more of the functions themselves. Some of the intentions they've got is that at the moment they haven't really got much ability to take in digital evidence, sort of pictures, videos, etc., because they haven't got the storage capacity. They look as if they're addressing that, so it will gradually become easier for people to actually report things. There's things like on their website say they've got some extension, but they haven't really told people about the new functions yet, partly because they're trying to work out and make sure they work all right decently before they tell absolutely everybody about them. But there should probably be some publicity sometime in the future to say there's all these new facilities available. You can do things this way, and this is a lot more convenient for you, basically, to do things this way. So that would also, if we improve the ease of reporting crimes or problems, basically, then basically, firstly, the police know about them, so they can actually do something about them, basically, and also they can obviously tie together things. So if there is a big instance of a problem that seems relatively minor in a particular place, they'll know about it now, whereas before the problem is that people may have moaned about something, but it's so hard to report that you sort of give up that stage and just put up with it. So I think it's those sorts of things to make it easier for people to report things to the police, which I think in turn will firstly make it easier for them to pursue things, but also obviously if crimes are being pursued in that sort of way, then the incidence of crime hopefully will come down, because if you know you're going to be caught for something, basically your chance of doing it is going to reduce. So I think that's the key issue, basically.
And as for our viewers who may be watching this and thinking, how can I get involved, how exactly can they get involved with the board, and what could they do?
There's other ways you can communicate with us on our website and through Twitter, Ealing SMB, Twitter ID. Also, you can get involved in the ward panels, the local ward-based ways of communicating with the police. And finally, of course, the key thing, just report anything that's any offence or any suspicious activities around.
Of course. Well, thank you very much for your time, Richard.
Right, thank you.
Have a good day.
Right, thank you.